so first step is going to be to integrate. And when I integrate here, you will notice that I'm not really ready to integrate because I don't have term, 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 right? I have these parentheses. So for that reason, I'm going to have to first simplify. And the simplification that I'm going to do here is to FOIL. So before I'm ready to integrate, I need to FOIL out this expression. So I have the 4x times 5x, that's going to give us a 20x squared. So my outer term is a 4x times 5x, that gives us 20x squared. Or excuse me, the first two is going to give us 20x squared. Then my outer term will be a 4x times 5, so that's going to give us a 20x. And then the inner term will be a 3 times 5x, so 15x. And then the last two terms, 3 times 5, will give us a 15 dx. Let me make sure I did that right. We have 4x times 5x is 20x squared. Outer is a 20x, inner is a 15x, and then the last two would be a 15. Now, you can then, of course, combine the outer and inner. So that 20 plus 15 would give you a 35x, and then plus 15 dx. And then here is when I would integrate. I'm just going to write int. And for integrating, I will add 1 to the exponent. So that's going to give us 20x to the third over 3. The 35x will go to 35x squared over 2. And then the 15 will add on to get 15x. Now, we don't write a plus c. The reason why we don't write a plus c is because of these bounds. So we put a bracket and then 3, negative 5. Now, that's not our final answer because we then have to go through our upper bound minus our lower bound. So upper minus, and here's where I really like to put that bracket around the lower bound. So this is going to give you, upper bound plugged in will be 20 times negative 5 cubed over 3 plus 35 times negative 5 squared over 2 plus 15 times negative 5. And then minus, let me put a little bracket, and then the lower bound plugged in. So 23 cubed over 3 plus 35, 3 squared over 2 plus 15 times 3. Now, if you get to this point on your test, I'm going to be like, good job. That is good enough. I'm not going to I might take off like a point or whatever for the final answer, but you then do need to simplify this answer. So I would try to use your calculator as much as possible on this. So I have 20 negative 5 to the third over 3. That gives me a decimal. Remember, if it gives you a decimal, you want to hit the math frac number 1 to convert into negative 2500 over 3. And then the same thing goes here. You have 35 times 25 over 2 gives you a decimal. Hit the math frac. You get 875 over 2. And then plus your 15 times negative 5. And then you will have to then put your little bracket there and then simplify out the bracket quantity. So that's going to give you 20 times 27 over 3. That gives you a decimal. So then, or it doesn't give you a decimal, sorry, because of the 27. So that's going to give you 180. And then 35 times 3 squared over 2. That should be a decimal. So hit math frac, and that gives you 315 over 2. And then the 15 times 3 to get 45. Now, the easiest way to do this that I know is to kind of start a separate sheet of paper with all your computations of it. But I like to keep the fractions just as they are and try to combine my whole numbers. So what I mean by that is I have negative 2500 over 3. I have the 875 over 2. I have the plus, or I have the minus 75. And then I have this big negative sign that needs to get distributed to all three of these terms. So that's going to give me negative 180 minus 315 over 2 minus 45. Now, before I get a common denominator for everything, what I like to do is take my whole numbers and just combine those together. Okay, so my whole numbers here would be the negative 75 minus 180 minus 45. So that gives us negative 300. Okay, then what I like to do is I like to say, okay, this 875 and the negative 315, those two terms have a common denominator, so I can combine those together. So that's going to give us 560 and then over 2, which very conveniently, this does not always happen this way, but very conveniently, that does simplify out to just 280. Okay, and sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't, but it does simplify where I have 280 minus 300, and then this negative 2500 over 3 is of course going to still be there. So we have negative 2500 over 3 and then minus 20. And then to combine those two, I will get my common denominator. So the negative 20 over 1 will become a common denominator of 3 over 3. So we'll have negative 2500 over 3 minus 60 over 3. And then you can simply take the negative 2500 minus the 60 to get your negative 30 or negative 2560 over 3. And see if that reduces. Again, it might reduce, it might not. Hit MathFrac, and you see that in this case it does not reduce. So that would be your final answer. But again, on test 5, I'm not going to take off a lot of points for this, but this is how you would go about getting that final answer.